Hi friends, this is Karina Dean and I am broadcasting to you live from Brooklyn, New York, and I am talking today about Mars retrograde. And what's really cool is that this time we have 4 planets in retrograde. We had 5. Jupiter just went direct this week. So what does that all mean? Well, typically when we have a Mercury retrograde, right, we want to be careful and we can even tread lightly, adapt to things, maybe not push so hard. So for Mercury, the planet of communication, this has a lot to do with learning about the timing of your words and the integrity of your words and being clear and concise. So with Mars going retrograde, this also has to do with your manifestations. What is it that you want to get done, right? And when planets go backwards or appear to go backwards to us from Earth, it causes some confusion. And what it is that we have to turn inward. We have to look within our intentions. We have to look within ourselves of what responsibility are we taking in our manifestations. And that is definitely going to work out for Mars and Mercury. So this is definitely a time where we have to get serious. We can't go into the escapism or the fantasy life as much. We need to really use our Pisces energy, where the energy is in Pisces, to be revealing, to be more clarifying, to cleanse ourselves. With Jupiter going direct right now, it's about that cleansing as well, right? So we really need to scrub clean. We need to dig deep. When we think about Mars and Pluto moving in retrograde, they happened at the same time, virtually. So it's like a waltz. When you see a waltz and they're dancing and then they make a shift and then it moves backwards together. The two move backward together. I really feel like Mars doesn't want to go backwards, but if he has to, what better way to do it than with Pluto, so that they can really dig deep and be that warrior spirit within. So everything that is happening on the external is merely a reflection of what is happening on the internal. And this is really attacking the belief systems and the psyches, and where it is that we are rigid and how it is that we... Hey, Gemini Brown Everese, thank you so much for joining. And Mars and Pluto moving backwards at the same time. It's like a dance, as I was saying, and it's like a movement that I believe is more harmonic than we could even realize if we understand the power of that energy to go inside and to look at where it is that we are stuck in actions that we are not taking. And why and how are we stuck? Because Mars is that warrior spirit, right? It's the go-getter. But if you don't know your own intentions, if you don't know what you want, then you're going hard for what? What are you going hard for? So we need to look at, I believe, the whys. Why do I want this? Why do I want to speak to this person? Why do I want to communicate? Why do I want to manifest? This week is really a great week for manifesting, I believe, and about taking the caution pause before the action, but the action can definitely happen. Being clear about our assertiveness, why we want to assert ourselves in certain situations, and why should we hold back. So I don't feel like the energy is about not taking action. I believe that the energy is about really tapping within and being in tune with your clear intentions, right? So that we are not putting too much onto other people. Mars rules over Aries, so it's about your selfish agenda, and our connection with selfishness, I believe, is definitely seen as typically more negative. But where Aries thrives is in the ability to think about the self and to put self first, to give ourself life first before the other, almost, because we are here in that experience as well as what our own needs are. So if we're looking for other people to fulfill anything for us, or we're looking at other people like, well, what is it that they are not meeting at my expectations? This is more of a sign, a trigger to show that it's more about, are you being clear about what your expectations are? Are you being clear and honest that you have something in it too, like that you do want for self too, and to be comfortable with that? I really believe it's about being comfortable with that. So thinking generations wise, I've been studying about the X, the occult knowledge of the X, and really digging deep into Beyonce's Lemonade. And I've seen it almost as like a initiation of my point and being able to expand my own knowledge, to be able to study the occult symbolism and the layers of the symbolism. So with Formation, Beyonce shows that X, and I've been talking a lot about the origins of how this is seen in the English language with the CH, which can be translated to the chi. Also how the X is the it's like a transition in the 60s, when we were really letting go of the slavery names. Those who were initiated, like Malcolm X, right? The X was like a unknown element. It's like I'm letting go of my slave self, so now I want to be something new and different, a brand new entity, but I don't know what that is yet. I'm still letting go of that slave self, that slave mentality. So that's what that X also represents. When we think about initiating ourselves out of a slave name, that X is also very present. The X also has a lot to do with the womb. It has a lot to do with the female, feminine power. It's also related to Venus in numbers. So the X has been on my mind lately, and I believe that it really ties into this year. I do. I feel like in my paradigm, it's coming up as a constant reminder of something. So what is this? Well, I started with the numbers, and I keep it simple and basic. Working with King Simon, Lloyd Strayhorn, I've really loved using the numbers to give me the root of things. So 2016 is a universal 9 year, which has a lot to do with endings. So then again, it's the idea of the X. We're letting go of something. And 9 being ruled by Mars in numerology, this is about letting go of things in an assertive way, letting go of our circumstances that we are not happy about, letting go of people that may not be working for us, letting go of any sort of actions that keep you in the same cycle, and taking responsibility for that. So even in this year as 2016, it's this idea of transition. We're really vigorously making certain moves. And then if that is the case, if 2016 is ruled by 9 and Mars, then we got to look at this Mars retrograde this year. This Mars retrograde is the theme to me of the year. And when Mars goes retrograde, it goes over certain generations, specifically this Generation X concept, because many would say Generation X is like the 60s to the 80s, right? Yep, absolutely. So the Generation X is like known as the 60s to the 80s, or not quite sure, and then like mid 80s to the end of the 80s, it's the millennials, but it's still like this unknown factor. It's like when we're doing algebra and we're trying to figure out what the X is, and we have to do this calculation and analysis to make that actually happen. So this reflection that I'm having is not really about saying what is Generation X, but just bringing up the fact that Generation X is an unknown factor. And in the symbology of X, that generation kind of represents the transition. And I feel like the transition of the people. Generation X, because we're not really quite sure, but we could calculate, we could analyze. It's still this idea that they're here to change shit up. So, but Mars going retrograde is going over Pluto, natal Pluto, for those who are born 1993 to 1998, 99. So anybody who knows, who is born at this time, or who knows someone who's born at this time, this is going to really be affecting their psyche in a very vigorous way, and facing those fears and ideas and concepts that they maybe have not really wanted to face if they have not been doing that work. So the 93 to 98 babies are really in this interesting transition period. And then we got to think about our Saturn returners, those born 1984 to 86, 87, because Mars is going over Sag, and the end, like 23 degrees to, like the end of Scorpio all the way back to 23. So this goes over the Saturn natal placement for those born 1984 and 86. So this is why I obviously am passionate about it, because this is my generation, and this is also revisiting the lessons in that Saturn return, really dealing with that karma, really facing your fears about any unfinished business that you haven't done in that way yet. So far, this is really a special time for everyone. But speaking about this unknown generation, this Generation X, they are the changers. They are the changers. All the way from the 60s to the 80s to the early 90s, it's this unknown factor. But I feel like this year, we're going to see a glimpse of what the potential is of this generation. So stay tuned, and as I learn more, as I keep digging for more in my own journey and studying, I'd love to be a vehicle, a vessel to reflect what it is that we're actually seeing. So take care of that Generation X, take care of yourself, and work to the best of what you need to work for to gain your blueprint, to gain what it is that you have come here to do. These planets going backwards is definitely, 4 to 5 planets going backwards to me is a significator that we are actually on the verge of major transformation on a personal and micro and macro level. So if we are committed to the work that we are really here to do, and just be disciplined in how it is that we do it, and be responsible, that it's really our time. And I was just discussing with someone last night about the idea of sovereignty and the real responsibility of sovereignty, right? Typically we think, okay, we're free to do anything we want. That is irresponsible. And I believe that sovereignty has a lot of responsibility that comes with the package, and really being sovereign. And that's understanding your karma, understanding that universal law of what it is that you have put out and what it is that you have to take care of, take investment in, and take responsibility for it. And then when you work with that contract that you've made with the stars, that contract that you've made here on earth, the work that you're doing, right, then we really have that freedom to be to use our superpowers. Then we have the freedom to really use our gifts to the best of their benefit and taking that responsibility. So that is my take on Mars retrograde. on Generation X, and I'll be back with more things as they come to me and I get passionate about them. So thank you for tuning in, and I will see you next time. This is Karina Dean out of Brooklyn. I'll see you later.